So, man, I wanted to start with a question. So, I usually meditate, like when I do meditate, at least once a week, and I ask myself a question, like whatever question comes up for me. And I wanted to play it for you and see if you could give me a response to it. So, I'll play it right now. Let me see. So, I'm sitting here having a thought, and my thought is, how do you know when that special person is that special person?
So the question is, how do you know if that special person is that special person?
Yeah. So I guess more so in the sense of like romantic partnership, because
Yeah.
you know, I've definitely, as I'm maturing, because I mean I've dated a lot over the past few years, but I think since I've like slowed down and just kind of taking some time to really connect to myself and starting to get to know someone new, yeah, it feels special and it feels different. And I think it's more so me bringing something different to it. But yeah, I'm curious to know your answer.
Yeah. So I would say from my experience, it depends on your initial reaction to that person. I'm not necessarily talking about love at first sight, but I am talking about like, what is it that when you meet this person after you've had an interaction with them, what is it that you want to do next, right? Like, do you want to like get to know them and be their friend and and be vulnerable with them after an initial round of meetings? If the answer is yes, then that's your person. But if you want to simply like
Yeah.
escalate things physically, that ain't your person. Now, this happened to me when I was, it was a very unexpected time, very unexpected time. Like I had just finished, so I graduated from Xavier in '07. I had finished Harvard in '08. And then while I was teaching kindergarten, I went on a blind date. It was one of my line brothers, Brandon. It was his friend. They knew each other. And funny enough, they knew each other because my wife at the time, a girlfriend or whatever, she lived in Boston, but she was doing AmeriCorps. And you remember we used to host all the AmeriCorps teams at Xavier. Whenever they would come in and do any recovery work in the Ninth Ward, we would host them. And so the semester I left Xavier, I graduated.
Oh, wow.
She came down. And so I always tell her that was perfect because if she would have met me my senior year, like there would be no us. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't happen. I was so, and then we'll talk about that too. Like I was so unhealed. Like, oh man, like that my concept of like what it meant to be a man and what it meant to be a good person was just not there. It just wasn't there at the time. And so I'm very happy we didn't meet. And remember, I was telling you, I always learn a lot about myself whenever I'm like outside of my comfort zones or even geographically when I'm outside of the South. Well, one of my biggest periods of growth was when I lived in Boston for 2 years and didn't know anybody, had never like seen snow like in a meaningful sense. You know what I mean? That was a time period where I really, really just had to sit with myself and not be slim, not be vigilante omega. Like all of that shit went out the window when I was there by myself. And it was such an important period and it lasted for 2 years. And then at the tail end of that period, I met my wife. And so that was the first time I had ever met a woman where as soon as I met her, I didn't want to do anything intimate. I simply just wanted to get to know her. And I wanted to like learn, from her. I wanted to like be her friend. all of these things I had never experienced that before. And that's how I knew that this is, my soulmate. I always tell my wife, God forbid, even if we don't work, like she will always be the love of my life because of the way we met and because of how I felt. Like I still remember how I felt when I first met her, and I actually told her, I was like, don't get creeped
Wow.
out, but I think I'm gonna marry you. Like I
That's
think you're gonna be my
beautiful, man.
wife. Yeah, I told her that, like, and then it was funny because she had just gotten out of like a long relationship, and she's older, so she had just gotten out of a long relationship, and so she had viewed me as just like a good time, like, this dude is headed back to the South for law school, like, yeah, let him take me out, we have some fun, and that was it. And she had already been in love before, and she had already experienced heartbreak, and I had experienced none of that. And so I was just completely starstruck. And she was just like, yeah, you're really into me, huh? And so I think to answer your question, if in that initial moment, in those initial moments, you find yourself just simply wanting to exist with that person and not in an intimate sense, like ironically, because I think we put so much emphasis on the intimacy, I think that's your person, you know?
Yeah,
Are you feeling like that's what you're experiencing right now?
I think so. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
for
cool.
sure.
That's awesome.
Because I'm recognizing how valuable. I appreciate that. Yeah, the friendship is very valuable to me. And like I've never really felt that before. I mean, I've tried
Mm-hmm.
to, you try to build a friendship, and it
Yeah.
just don't really, it just don't really mesh like that. But it just feels so good, and that's not even talking about the intimacy. Like just the connection feels so good,
Mm-hmm.
and it feels just natural, and it feels right. And I appreciate you sharing that. I do.